What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty P here with another episode of Steelers Touch on Under. We are reacting to the Steelers versus Texans preseason matchup. The Steelers lost this game 20-12. Interesting kind of game. Couple of quick takeaways for you. Having watched that game, having seen what the Steelers did going into the next couple of weeks and heading into the season. So we'll have about 5 or 6, 7 takeaways, depending on the way you want to sort of view it and sum it up with what I've got to say. But really keen to talk about this game, say 20-12. Now, number one, it was interesting before the game. We heard, I woke up to the news. Game kicked off at 9 a.m. my time, Australian time, Sydney time. And we heard the news about, I saw about 7-ish a.m. Golden had retired. He'd been put on the retired reserve list, which opened up an opportunity for the linebackers. Outside linebackers particularly, we saw some very different sets even toward the end of the game with Peyton Wilson all over the place. But in terms of in a good way and moving around the field. But I want to talk about the outside linebackers. I thought Herbig, when he was on the field, had a really strong game. Nick Herbig there. I thought Jeremiah Moon looked good, particularly with his sack. Obviously, you need to go back and watch more of it. But I think Herbig had a couple of tackles. I think he had 2 in the end, pulling up on that list. But really just excited with the pass pressure. Herbig looked good. So I'm feeling good about that position, even though Alex Highsmith has the groin complaint at the moment. The look on the offensive side, I thought Fields definitely has way more zip than Kenny Pickett ever had at that ball. A couple of really big passes, really good plays that we saw in the passing offense to Van Jefferson, George Pickens. They got Des Patrick in the mix. I thought there was quite a fluidity to the passing game, more than what we expected. Obviously, Arthur Smith likes the run, but you saw the ability for that intermediate to long passing game start to open up. So I was pretty happy with that, as well as the pass rush. The rushes, the running backs. Look, it was an interesting day on the field for them, but they had over 260 yards. You do see this in the preseason. Sorry, that was receiving yards. They had over 100 yards. Yeah, they broke the 100-yard barrier. Daijun Edwards. I was a big Daijun Edwards fan going into this preseason set, and having compared him to Jalen Warren and coming out. There's been a lot of talk in camp around Aaron Champlin, who had 12 yards through 2 carries. Jonathan Ward, 26 yards, 6 carries, has been a name we've heard about a little bit over the last week or so. So to see Daijun Edwards have a big running, it was a 24-yard long, to have the touchdown as well. Really was happy to see that, because I'm really hopeful this guy can scrape in as the 3rd or 4th guy. So really loved seeing that. I'm not so on the Perine or Perrine train. People call them different things. But yeah, really, I was really happy for Daijun Edwards. That's why he made the thumbnail for the video there. But overall, I thought the rushes were pretty good. Jalen Warren looked good. Najee Harris, it was all about the blocks that were sort of set up for him. And the running lane. So I'm not deeply fussed about those 2 guys. Those 2 guys are good to go. They're proven veterans. But yeah, really happy for Daijun Edwards in that respect. Look, it was really, really interesting to see Peyton Wilson all over the field, and he looked really good. 7 tackles total, 5 solo, 1 tackle for a loss. He was everywhere, backed up by Moon with the 6 tackles. Benny Bishop was looking good, but particularly Peyton Wilson. You saw him from the starting defensive set onwards. Peyton Wilson is definitely going to be a key feature for this defense this year, alongside Patrick Queen and Leonard Roberts. There was some interesting. I want to go back and look at it. There were some big plays that Houston were able to make at times, or some decent chunk yardage plays, and there was a little bit going wrong in the middle there. But that also not having Minka there. Deshaun Elliott was only played a certain amount of the snaps. I sort of, from my perspective there on the takeaways, I loved the fact they're using Peyton Wilson early and often. You might find that they use him a bit next week as well, and they dial him back the following week to let Queen and Landon come together, or they might choose to do that next week. But regardless, I thought from a Peyton Wilson perspective, massive from him, and he's going to be a big feature for this team this season. Liao was good. So I was happy with that on the defensive side. That's sort of my takeaways. Defense, don't stress about the defense with the 20 points. But yeah, I like what I saw Liao with that sack. Ogunjobi actually, when he was on the field at the start, didn't look too bad. But that was a very small snippet that I was sort of seeing of him. Ryan Watts, obviously, he's on the name on the screen right now for those who can see it, but 4 tackles, 3 of them were solos, so that was good as well. So look, it was kind of interesting. I thought I want to go back and look at some of the defensive schemes that the Steelers employed as well. There was one point on a key third down in the end of the third. It was early in the fourth. And it looked like a 4-3. Now, it was probably, when I go back and look at it, a sub-package play with different dime backers. But in terms of the front that the offense went up against, there was the 4 defensive linemen and then 3 and you sort of had these 3 linebackers sort of sitting back there. I couldn't get the number of one of the guys in that jersey, so I've got to go back to that play. The Peyton Wilson was definitely there, and Mark Robinson was in there. So that was kind of interesting. Like, we've talked about Mark Robinson and his development as a guy that came into the league playing linebacker, but had traditionally played at running back. The fact that the Steelers are confident enough, even in a preseason game, to stick him next to Peyton Wilson and trust him with Peyton Wilson there, this actually says a lot about Peyton Wilson's ability, not just his athletic ability, but his ability to have learned the defense, green dot potential, all of those things. Good to see. Welcome back, people like, Dirty Red. I thought it was a shame from Kuntz, because I thought a lot of the snaps had looked really good until the snap came and the Steelers missed the kick. I thought Frazier, when he got onto the field, so I want to talk about offensive line, I thought Frazier's snapping was a lot better. It was a lot cleaner. It seemed quick. It seemed sharp, clean from the get-go that he went in there. So I was really, really happy about that. I really wanted to see that from Frazier. So from my perspective on that, I think otherwise around the offensive line, obviously Fatanu didn't start. That made sense, I think, for a lot of it. But I felt he was pretty good when he was on the field. Interesting, there was a few plays when they did some things that Darnell was next to him. I thought that was interesting. Darnell was sort of a buddy system last year with Broderick, and that helped Broderick adjust to the NFL. I thought Spencer Anderson played well enough. I don't think he did everything, oh my God, crazy well. I don't think he did anything crazy bad. But again, I want to go back and look at that. It's hard in these preseason games because there's so much rotation and guys doing different things, and they're not playing with the starters necessarily versus when you're looking at in-season tape. So it can get a little bit more difficult because you don't know what else other people have blown or what are they trying something new. But overall, I was happy enough with the offensive line. There was, I think it was 3 sacks on the day. Not too bad. They've got a decent pass rush over there at Houston. They've got a guy like D'Amico Ryans as head coach. They've got a good focus on defense. But I guess overall, my takeaway for all the fans out there is that, 20-12 in a preseason game, it's not that big a deal. Do I wish the Steelers could have looked a bit more potent on offense? Yes, but Hayward had the good touchdown as well. I thought it was just a bit of it was blowing off the cobwebs, a bit of rust, that sort of thing. I was quite happy with Fields. If he can build from here, that's great. But look, the good news is, still fans, Steelers didn't lose a preseason game last year, and look how the season ultimately turned out. So we're actually still in the mix for the Super Bowl because we did lose a preseason game. But stay tuned for more to come from Steelers Touchdown Under. It's going to obviously be a big week into the preseason game 2 as this roster starts to take shape. Expect more cuts, chops, changes. Interesting, we've seen Juju cut by the 49ers, by the Patriots as well. I will say one thing about, though, that I did say in the offense before I close the show. This didn't, to me, seem like a team that desperately needed Ayuk, but I'll just leave that there. Otherwise, as always, go Steelers.